Welcome back to Accounting and Business Breakdown. Today, we are stepping into the arena. We are tackling what many people consider the final boss of the qualification journey.
It's the level that keeps people up at night, for sure.
It really is. We are back with our series Past the Paper, and specifically the sub-series Beyond 49%. And today, well, we are leaving the classroom behind. We are talking about the professional level.
The beast.
The beast. It's a fitting name, isn't it? And look, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, I want to set the scene. If you've been with us for the previous sessions in this series, you know the drill. We've already covered the foundations level traps, those early bad habits, guessing on multiple choice questions, not reading properly.
The simple mistakes that cost easy marks.
Exactly. And then we moved on to the skills level traps, where we really dug into that obsession with calculation over analysis.
Right, the comfort of the calculator.
The comfort of the calculator. But today feels different.
It feels different because it is different. And I think that is the very first thing we need to unpack. The jump from the skills level papers, like, say, financial management or performance management, to the professional level, like advanced audit, SBL, or APM, it's not just a step up in difficulty. It is a fundamental shift in reality.
Okay, hold on. Let's pause right there and unpack that immediately. Because I think a lot of people listening right now, they assume, oh, it's just the same stuff, but harder.
Yeah, that's the common trap.
Like instead of calculating tax for one person, I'm now calculating it for a whole group. Or instead of auditing a small company, I'm auditing a huge one.
Yeah.
It's just the volume, right? But you're saying the entire game has changed.
Completely. And this is the danger zone. This is where people get stuck. In the skills level, you are, for all intents and purposes, a student. You are demonstrating to an examiner that you have read the textbook.
You're proving you did the homework.
You're proving you know the rules. It's a transaction.
Yeah.
I show you I know this rule. You give me the mark.
Right. It's very linear. Calculate the variance. I calculate the variance. I get the mark. Simple.
Exactly. But at the professional level, the examiner doesn't really care if you know the textbook. They assume you know the textbook. I mean, that's the baseline entry requirement. Now, you are no longer a student. You are a consultant. You are a manager. You are a trusted advisor.
So the identity crisis is the first hurdle to overcome.
It is the biggest hurdle. And this is precisely why we see so many incredibly bright people. I'm talking about people who breeze through the earlier exams with 70s and 80s, suddenly hitting a brick wall. They get 48%, 49%, they fail, they resist, they fail again.
And it must be so frustrating for them. They're thinking, I know this stuff, why can't I pass?
Because they are still answering like students. They are dumping all their knowledge onto the page instead of exercising judgment.
That is the word of the day, isn't it? Judgment.
It is the currency of the professional level. And that's really our roadmap for this whole breakdown. We're going to break down the behavioral shifts you need to make to get over that 49% hump. We're going to talk about handling the massive case studies, what we call the kitchen sink trap.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the professional marks, which are, a huge part of the paper now. We'll get into strategic evaluation. And finally, the psychological control needed to just survive the clock.
Because if you can't control your mind in that exam hall, you can't control the paper. It's as simple as that.
Precisely. It all falls apart.
But before we get to the tactics, I just want to push back on this identity shift a little bit more because it sounds a bit vague. Be a consultant. What does that actually mean for a student sitting in an exam hall with a sweaty palm and a cheap calculator?
That's a fair question. It means you have to stop trying to impress the examiner with your memory. When you are a student, you think, if I write down everything I know about this topic, about IFRS 9 or whatever, I will get marks.
The shotgun approach. Spray and pray.
Right. But if you are a consultant and a real-life client asks you, how do I fix my inventory problem? And you reply by reciting the dictionary definition of inventory, you're going to get fired.
You're useless. You're completely useless to them.
You are technically correct, but you are practically useless. And that is exactly what a 49% script looks like. It is a technically correct, but practically useless answer. A pass script, a 65% script, looks at the specific mess the client is in and offers a specific, tailored solution.
So we are moving from what is the rule to how do we apply this rule to this specific disaster in front of me.
Exactly. And that brings us very neatly to the first major section of our discussion today, the case study itself, the sheer volume of it.
Section A, case-based pressure and the kitchen sink trap. Let's get into the mechanics of this, because when you open a professional level paper, let's take AAA or SBL as a prime example, it's not really a question anymore, is it? It's a novel.
It is a dossier. You aren't getting a paragraph with a few numbers. You're getting a story. You're getting Exhibit 1, an email from your partner. Exhibit 2, draft financial statements. Exhibit 3, notes from a very tense meeting with a nervous finance director.
Exhibit 4, press clippings about some kind of scandal.
It just keeps coming. It's information overload.
Yeah.
And I feel like the immediate gut reaction for most people is panic.
That is the intended reaction. The examiner is testing your ability to filter noise from signal. But the trap, and we call this the kitchen sink trap, is when the student reads all of this, sees a keyword they recognize, say goodwill or ethics, and then panic writes everything they have ever learned about that topic, the brain dump. And we talked about it in the skills level, but it sounds like it's even more dangerous here.
It's fatal here. They throw the kitchen sink at the examiner. Here is the definition of goodwill. Here is the calculation method from the textbook. Here is the entire history of the goodwill standard. And the examiner looks at it and gives them 0 marks.
0. But wait a minute. Even if the definition is perfect, word for word correct.
0. Because the client, the fictional person in the case study, didn't ask for a definition. They asked, is our goodwill impaired because of these new regulations that have just come in? If you just define it, you're a student. If you assess the risk based on the facts in the case, you are an advisor.
I want to make this concrete for people. We have some source material here regarding the heart group scenario. This is a classic example of what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yes. Heart group is a perfect example to dissect. In this scenario, you're playing the role of an audit manager. The client is a theater group. They have, I think, 50 theaters across the country. They put on plays, they sell tickets, they run the bars and the lobbies.
Theaters. Got it. Grease paint, curtains. I'm picturing it.
Now, a typical requirement in a case like this asks you to identify business risks. The 49% student sees the word risk. Their brain creates a shortcut, and they start writing down every generic business risk they learned in their textbook.
Right. Oh, the economy might turn down. Oh, staff might go on strike. Oh, what if competitors lower their ticket prices?
I mean, those are risks, technically. They're not wrong.
But they are risks that apply to a hot dog stand, a car factory, or a tech startup. They are boilerplate risks. They're completely generic. They garner 0 marks, or maybe half a sympathy mark if the marker is feeling generous. Why 0, though? If the economy does turn down, the theater will lose money. It's a true statement.
It is a true statement, but it is not a specific statement. The examiner, who is acting as the audit partner in this scenario, doesn't need you to tell them that economies exist. They need you to look at the exhibits, to dig into the details of this client. In the Heart Group case notes, there is a specific line. It says something like, Heart Group has given a ticket sales guarantee for the big new production at the Phantom Theater.
Ah, okay. That's a specific contract term, not a general economic theory.
It's a bomb waiting to go off. It's a very specific commercial commitment. If that particular show flops, Heart Group has to pay out a massive sum of money to the production company. That is a specific, tangible, quantifiable liability. The past student writes about that.
So, just to spell it out, the generic student writes, sales might fall. The professional student writes, the ticket sales guarantee at the Phantom Theater, as noted in Exhibit 3, creates a significant contingent liability. This could wipe out the company's cash reserves if the show is unpopular, raising questions about going concern.
Exactly. Do you hear the difference in that language? One is a platitude, the other is a professional analysis. It links a fact from an exhibit to a specific accounting concept.
The second one sounds like something a lawyer or an accountant would actually say in a real meeting.
And that's the test. I always tell students this. If you can cover the name of the company at the top of your answer, if you cover up Heart Group and your answer still makes perfect sense for a different company, like a supermarket or a software developer, then you have failed. Your answer must be so specific to Heart Group that it wouldn't make sense for anyone else.
That is a fantastic litmus test, the cover-up test. If I can cover the company name and it still applies, I need to delete it and start again.
Precisely. And this requires integration. This is another huge trap at this level, treating the different exhibits as separate islands.
What do you mean by islands? They come as separate documents.
Right, but students often read Exhibit 1, answer a question based only on that. Then they read Exhibit 2, answer another question. They don't see that the documents are telling one single coherent story. They don't connect them.
It's about connecting the dots.
You have to connect the dots. You might see in Exhibit 1, the email from the partner, that she mentions a loss of a major corporate sponsor. Then, 3 pages later in Exhibit 3, you see the draft financials showing a really precarious cash flow position.
And the 49% student just lists those as 2 separate, unrelated points. Point 1, They lost a sponsor. Point 2, cash flow is bad.
Correct. But the professional integrates them. They synthesize the information. They say the loss of the major sponsor mentioned in the partner's email combined with the already poor cash position shown in Exhibit 3 creates a significant and immediate going concern risk. That synthesis, that is where the big marks are.
It's like being a detective. You're building a case using clues you found in different rooms of the house.
You are. And just like a detective, you can't get distracted by red herrings or irrelevant details. You have to focus on what matters to the client in that specific moment. If the client is the company Speedy style from another case and they are worried about their new inventory system, you focus on that. You don't start lecturing them on their HR policies unless it's directly relevant to the inventory issue.
So how do we stop the brain dump? How do we stop the panic that leads to these generic answers? Because I feel like when people see that much text, the fight or flight response just kicks in.
You need a grounding mechanism, a focal point. And in almost every professional level exam, particularly AAA, SBL, and APM, that mechanism is Exhibit 1. Usually it's the partner's email, or maybe the CEO's instruction memo.
We've talked about this in our prep for this session. You call this the Bible?
The partner's email is the Bible. It is the most important document in the entire exam paper. It sets the rules of engagement. It tells you who you are writing to, and exactly what they need from you. If the partner says, prepare a briefing note for me to take to a meeting with the audit committee, focusing specifically on business risks, that is your mission.
Right. It defines the scope.
It defines everything, the format, the audience, the content. If you write an academic essay instead of a briefing note, you fail. If you write about audit risks instead of the requested business risks, you fail. If you use a tone that is too casual or too academic, you fail. The email dictates the structure and the tone of your answer.
It sounds so simple when you lay it out like that, but in the heat of the moment, I can see how people just forget who they're supposed to be. They just want to start calculating something.
They dive into the data because data feels safe. It feels concrete. I can calculate a ratio. But if you calculate a ratio when the partner asks for a risk assessment of the company's governance structure, you are answering a question nobody asked. You are solving a problem that doesn't exist for the client.
So the strategy for Section A, to boil it down, is read the partner's email like your life depends on it. It sets your role. Then, mine the other exhibits for specific facts, not generic theories. And finally, link those facts together to tell a coherent story that answers the partner's specific question.
Perfectly summarized. If you can do that, you are already thinking like a manager, not a student.
Okay, thinking like a manager brings us neatly to the next section. Because at the professional level, you actually get marks just for behaving like a professional on the page.
The famous and often misunderstood professional marks.
Right. I feel like there is a huge misconception here. In the lower levels, you don't really see this. But now, in SBL or AAA, you might see a requirement, and next to it says professional marks, 10 marks, or even 20 marks for SBL. And I think some students just think, oh, great, free marks. All I need to do is write neatly and use good grammar.
If only it were that easy. These are absolutely not free marks for handwriting or spelling. In fact, thinking of them as free marks is the quickest way to lose them. These are marks awarded for demonstrating professional behavior.
So what does that actually look like on a page? How do you write professionally?
It breaks down into a few specific assessable skills. The examiners, specifically in AAA, SBL, and APM, they even list these out for you. The big ones are communication, analysis, and evaluation, professional skepticism, and commercial acumen.
Let's break those down one by one. Start with communication. Because again, people think, I speak English, I can communicate.
It's not about vocabulary or, flowery language. It's about structure. Imagine you are a busy audit partner. You have 5 minutes before walking into a board meeting to read a briefing note prepared by your manager. Do you want to read 3 pages of dense, unformatted text? A solid wall of words?
Absolutely not. I'd be furious. I want bullet points. I want headings. I want to be able to find what I need in 30 seconds.
Exactly. A huge part of the communication mark is simply this. Did you use headings? Did you use subheadings? Did you structure the answer so that a busy person can scan it and get the key messages? If the requirement asks for audit risks and ethical issues, you better have a bold heading that says audit risks and another bold heading that says ethical issues.
So the briefing note format isn't just a suggestion, it's a direct instruction.
It's a requirement for those marks. If the email asks for a briefing note, you should start your answer with, to audit partner, from audit manager, date, today's date, subject, key risks for Hart Group audit planning. You frame it. That simple formatting can be the difference between a pass and a fail on those professional marks.
That seems incredibly tactical. Just putting to and from at the top can actually save your exam.
It signals to the examiner that you are playing the role. It sets the frame from the very first word. If you just launch in and start writing the audit risks are, you are a student answering a question in an exam. If you write, subject, audit planning for Heart Group, you are an employee doing a job. It's a subtle but powerful shift.
Okay, that's structure. Let's talk about the one that I think confuses people the most out of that list. Commercial acumen.
Ah, yes, the big one.
Of all the professional skills, this feels like the one that really scares students. Skepticism makes sense to an auditor. Communication makes sense. But commercial acumen, it feels so vague. It's like asking, do you have business savvy? How do you demonstrate that if you've never actually run a business?
It scares people because you can't memorize it. You can't learn acumen from a flashcard or a textbook definition. It's about understanding how the real world works, how businesses actually make money and face risks.
So how do you fake it? Or at least how do you demonstrate it in an exam context?
You don't fake it. You just pause for a second and ask yourself a simple question. Does this make business sense? Let's look at the Speedy style case from the sources. This is a perfect example to illustrate this point.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Okay, so you are the auditor for a company called Speedy Style. The client comes to you with a proposal. They want your audit partner, your boss, to sit on their board of directors as a non-executive director.
Okay. My alarm bells are ringing immediately. Massive red flag.
Right. Now, the student brain, the 49% brain, goes, ethics. I know this. That is a self-interest threat and a familiarity threat. The Code of Ethics, paragraph 4.2, says this is forbidden.
And they write that down, quote the code, and feel very clever.
And they get the technical marks for spotting the ethical breach. They've followed the rule, but they miss all of the commercial acumen marks.
Why? They got the rule right. It is an ethics breach.
Because they're just following the rule book like a robot. Commercial acumen asks a different, more practical question. It asks, putting the rules aside for 1 second, is this a smart move for our business, for the audit firm? Even if it were legal, is it a stupid thing to do?
Okay, so what does the acumen answer look like then?
The acumen answer says something like this. Look, if the partner joins the board, our firm automatically loses its independence. That means we would almost certainly have to resign as auditors.
Okay, logical consequence.
If we resign as auditors, we lose the annual audit fee from this client. We need to consider the financial impact. Does the fee the partner would get for sitting on the board cover the loss of the entire audit fee? It's highly unlikely.
Ah, so you're looking at the profit and loss statement of the audit firm itself.
Exactly. You're counting the cost. Then you take it a step further. You think about reputation. What happens if this goes wrong? If Speedy Style collapses while our partner is on their board, the press will destroy us. We'll be on the front page. We could lose other clients who worry about our judgment. The reputational contagion is a massive commercial risk to our entire practice.
That is a completely different level of thinking. The first answer is a compliance officer saying, computer says no.
Mm-hmm.
The second answer is a business owner saying, this is a bad deal.
This is a bad deal. That is the essence of commercial acumen. It's stepping back from the technical rules and looking at the practical, real-world consequences.
I see. It's about thinking through the second and third order effects, not just the immediate rule, but what happens next and what happens after that.
Correct. And then we have professional skepticism. This is absolutely crucial for audit, of course, but it applies in finance and business papers too.
Skepticism. Basically, I don't believe you.
It's not just, I don't believe you. It's more nuanced. It's, I hear what you're saying, but I need to see the evidence. It's about actively challenging assumptions, especially management's assumptions. Let's use the Viola Ltd source here as an example.
Right. Viola Ltd management is telling the auditor, don't worry about our terrible cash flow problem. We are definitely going to get a big new bank loan.
Now, the naive student, the one without skepticism, writes down in their answer, management plans to secure a new loan, so the going concern assumption appears to be safe.
They just take the client's word for it. They write it down as fact.
They do, and they fail that section. The skeptical professional writes something very different. They write, management claims they will get a loan. However, has the bank formally agreed to this in writing? What are the proposed terms and covenants? What if the bank says no at the last minute? Given the company's recent poor performance, is it even likely that a bank would extend further credit on favorable terms?
It's poking holes in the story.
It is poking holes. It's realizing that management has an inherent bias. If the finance director's annual bonus depends on hitting a certain profit target, and suddenly they decide to change a key accounting estimate to magically boost profit, a professional skeptic raises an eyebrow. They question it. They document that risk.
And finally on this list is analysis and evaluation. This sounds a lot like the so what test we talked about in our skills level breakdown.
It is the so what test on steroids. Let's go back to financial data for a moment. A student might calculate a ratio from the financials. They'll write, revenue is down 15% year on year.
That's a fact. It's right there on the page. You can't argue with it.
It is a fact, but it is a description. It gets you very few marks because you've added no value. Analysis is saying revenue is down 15% because, as mentioned in the press clippings in Exhibit 4, a new competitor entered the market. This decline implies our current pricing strategy is no longer competitive, and we may need to urgently review our cost base to protect margins.
Ah, I see. The first part, revenue is down. It's just looking at the page. The second part, the because of, and which implies. That's the actual analysis. That's the thinking.
Exactly. You are adding value. You are explaining the implications. If you just describe the graph, you're a photocopier. If you explain what the graph means for the business, you are an analyst.
Don't be a photocopier. I love that. That should be on a t-shirt. And these professional marks, they can really add up to 20% of the entire paper.
Yes. In a 50-mark question, 10 of those marks might be for professional skills. That is literally the difference between getting 40% and getting 60%. Often, the real difference between a 49% fail and a 50% pass is purely the tone of voice you adopt in your writing. Did you sound like a scared student, or did you sound like a trusted advisor?
That is a powerful thought. You could have all the technicals right, but if you sound scared or unstructured, you lose all those professional marks.
And conversely, if you sound confident, structured, and commercially aware, you pick them up. Sometimes, even if your technicals aren't 100% perfect.
Okay, moving on to section C. We've touched on this a bit, but I want to go deeper into the evaluation and recommendation traps, because I know from reading examiner reports that they complain about this constantly. Candidates are describing, not evaluating.
It is the #1 complaint. Year after year, paper after paper, it never changes.
We've talked about the so what test, but let's talk about the next step, making recommendations, because this is where I think students get paralyzed by fear. They're terrified of being wrong.
They are. It's a huge psychological barrier. They sit on the fence. They write something like, on the one hand, option A has these good points and these bad points. On the other hand, option B has these good points and these bad points. And then they just stop.
Because they want the examiner to be the one to decide.
Exactly. They are afraid to commit to a conclusion. But a client pays you for advice. They don't pay you to list their own problems back to them. They pay you to tell them what you think they should do.
So you have to make a call. You have to pick a side.
You have to make a call. And here is the secret that a lot of students don't realize. In these professional exams, especially in papers like SBL or APM, there is often no single correct strategic answer.
Wait, really? That feels completely counterintuitive for an accounting exam, which is all about right and wrong answers.
Really. In a strategic case study, if you recommend option A and you justify it well with the data and facts from the case, you will get the marks. If your friend sitting next to you recommends the complete opposite, option B, and they also justify it well with facts from the case, they will also get the marks. The marks are in the justification, not in the final choice.
That should be incredibly liberating for students. But I guess it's scary because we're all so used to math, where 2 + 2 always equals 4.
Exactly. But in business, the question is never that simple. Should we launch the new product? Maybe. Maybe not. It depends entirely on the argument you build.
Let's look at some of the source cases, like Robin Holt University or Gracie. In these scenarios, we have these failing entities. If a company is clearly failing, you can't just list the problems and walk away.
No, that's just description. In the Gracie case, the Lux Resort is bleeding money, and the whole local area is in economic decline. You can't just say profitability is low. You have to evaluate the options. Should we try to invest more money to turn it around? Well, probably not. The area is declining. Should we close it? That's an option. Should we try to sell it, even at a loss?
You have to come down on one side and suggest a specific course of action.
Yes. A pass-level answer would conclude with something like, based on the analysis, I recommend closing the Lux Resort. The long-term economic trend of the area is negative, making a turnaround unlikely, and the capital could be better invested in the Uri Resort, which is located in a growing market. That is a pass-level recommendation. It's decisive and it's justified.
But what you have to avoid is the generic recommendation, right? The textbook dump. recommendation.
Oh, please, please avoid that. This drives examiners crazy. They see it all the time. The company should improve its quality control, or the company should focus on cutting costs.
The company should try to increase revenue.
The company should do better. It's completely useless advice. You need to be specific and link it directly to the case you've just been analyzing.
So instead of a generic phrase like cut costs, what should we be saying?
We look at the data in the exhibits. If the data shows that the marketing spend has tripled in the last year but sales haven't moved at all, we say, I recommend reviewing the marketing budget and cutting the ineffective television ad campaign, which would result in an immediate annual saving of $200,000.
Specifics, data, actionable advice.
That is what a professional does. A student gives platitudes. A professional gives a plan.
Okay, this is all great strategy. But there is a monster lurking in the exam hall that kills more students than a lack of knowledge ever will. The clock.
Section D, time, discipline, and psychological control. This is where it all comes together.
We call this the mathematics of panic.
It is brutal. These exams are incredibly time-pressured. You are effectively being asked to do 4 hours of high-level professional work in just over 3 hours.
And the biggest trap of all is question 1, isn't it? The question 1 quagmire. It's a classic. In papers like AAA or SBR, question 1 is often a massive, integrated, 50-mark case study.
Half the exam in one question.
Half the exam, which means it should take up half your time, roughly 1.5 hours, maybe a little more. But what happens in reality?
Students get sucked in. It's the first thing they see. It's big. It's intimidating.
You get sucked in. They want it to be perfect. They keep reading and rereading the exhibits. They keep polishing their briefing note, adding more and more detail. They look up at the clock, and 2.5 hours have passed.
And they have just 30 or 40 minutes left for the other 50 marks of the paper.
And at that moment, they have failed. Mathematically, they have failed. You cannot pass a 100-mark paper if you only properly attempt 60 marks of it. Even if you get 100% on what you wrote, which you won't, you are capping your maximum possible score at 60. It's a guaranteed fail.
So what is the rule? How do you stop yourself?
Minutes per mark. It has to be a ruthless, non-negotiable discipline. You have roughly 1.8 minutes per mark. To be safe and build in reading time, you should aim for about 1.5 minutes per mark. So if a question is worth 10 marks, you give yourself 18 minutes, max.
15 to 18 minutes, that's your window, maximum.
And when that timer on your watch goes off,
you stop.
even if you are in the middle of the sentence.
Even if you are in the middle of a word, you put a full stop, you leave a gap on the page, you turn the page and move on to the next question.
That sounds insane. That feels like you're giving up on marks. It feels like failure.
It feels like failure in the moment, but it is the only way to pass the paper overall. You have to treat the exam like a triage nurse in an emergency room. You treat the first patient until they are stable, then you have to move to the next one. You don't spend 3 hours trying to perfectly put a bandage on a small cut on one patient's finger while the guy in the next bed is having a massive heart attack.
That is a very vivid image. You have to save as many marks as you possibly can across the entire paper.
Exactly, because here is the brutal truth of the marking scheme. The first 50% of the marks in any quotient are the easiest to get. The last 20% are the hardest. By spending that extra hour polishing question 1, you are fighting for the hardest, most obscure marks. While you are leaving the low-hanging fruit, the easy marks of question 2 and 3, completely untouched on the tree.
You're trading diamonds for dust.
Exactly. It's a terrible trade.
This brings us to a very specific psychological trap related to this, the emotional attachment to calculations.
Oh, this is the skills level hangover in its purest form. In the lower levels, getting the right number was everything. The whole question was about it.
Right. Balancing the balance sheet to the penny, getting the exact net present value.
In the professional level, specifically in exams like SBR or APM, candidates obsess over getting the perfect final number. They will spend 20 minutes trying to find why their goodwill calculation is off by $500.
And how many marks is that final perfect number actually worth?
Usually 1, maybe even half a mark, sometimes 0.
No way. That can't be right. All that work for 1 mark?
All that work for 1 mark. The marks are in the process, they are in the working notes, they are in the discussion and the evaluation that follows. The examiner pays for the commentary, not for the final number from the calculator.
So let's play this out. I'm an SBR, I'm calculating goodwill, and I can't figure out the fair value of the non-controlling interest. What do I do?
You plug a figure, you make a reasonable assumption. You write clearly in your working, assuming NCI is $1 million, and you finish the calculation using that number. And then, and this is the crucial part, you write your evaluation and your commentary based on that assumed number.
And you still get the marks for the evaluation part.
You get all the marks for the evaluation, and you get most of the marks for the calculation method itself. You might lose that one single mark for the wrong input. It's a calculated sacrifice.
That is a game changer.
Yeah.
We are sacrificing 20 minutes of our life for 1 mark. It's totally irrational.
It is irrational, but it comes from that deep-seated desire for perfection that high-achieving students have. You have to learn to let it go. Good enough and finished is infinitely better than perfect and incomplete.
We also need to talk about what you call exam PTSD. That awful moment when you realize you've completely messed up a question and you let it ruin the rest of your paper.
The negative spiral. You come out of question 1, you know you spent too long on it, or you know you didn't understand the revenue recognition rule properly, and you carry that panic and frustration into question 2. Your head is not in the game anymore.
How do we reset? How do you perform a mental reboot in the middle of the exam?
You have to treat each question as a separate client meeting.
I like that visualization. Tell me more.
Question 1 was a meeting with client A. Maybe it went badly. Maybe you spilled coffee on their annual report. Fine. That meeting is over. It's in the past. Now you are walking into a brand new meeting with client B. That's question 2. Client B doesn't know you spilled coffee on client A. They don't care.
It's a clean slate.
It's a completely clean slate. If you let the failure of question 1 affect your performance on question 2, you are failing twice for the price of 1 mistake. You have to learn to compartmentalize. Take a deep breath, turn the page, and say, that's done. Next job.
It's mental toughness.
Yeah.
It really is. It's not just about accounting knowledge.
It is. The professional level is a test of resilience and emotional regulation as much as it is a test of accounting standards.
So let's bring this all together. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've faced the beast.
We have.
If we had to summarize the entire transformation, the beyond 49% checklist for the professional level, what does it look like?
I think it all boils down to that identity shift we started with. You are moving from a student who calculates to an advisor who advises. That's the core of it.
And the checklist, the
Yeah.
key actions.
First, the partner's email is the Bible. Read it first, read it last. It sets your role and your tasks. Ignore it at your peril. Structure dictates marks. Use headings. Use the right format. Make your answer look professional to get the professional marks. Don't submit a wall of text.
Okay.
Evaluate. Don't just describe. Always ask, so what? And you must make a justified recommendation. Don't sit on the fence. Make a decision.
And finally, the big one.
Be ruthless with your time. 1.8 minutes per mark.
Mm-hmm.
Walk away when the time is up. And please do not obsess over getting the final decimal point perfect in a long calculation.
It sounds so doable when you say it like that. It's so logical.
It is doable, but it requires practice. You can't just listen to us talk about this and then expect to do it on the day. You have to practice writing under strict time pressure.
Yeah.
You have to practice stopping yourself from brain dumping.
It's about building muscle memory for these new behaviors.
Exactly. It's a training exercise, not just a learning exercise.
Oh, this has been an absolute masterclass in the strategy of the professional level. For our listeners, if you're prepping for these exams, don't just bury your head in the textbook. Re-listen to this conversation. Think about your strategy, not just your knowledge.
And if you haven't already, it might be worth going back to listen to our earlier session, The Examiner's Playbook. It explains how the marking grids actually work, which reinforces everything we've just said about structure and professional marks.
And definitely check out skills level traps one more time, just to make sure you aren't bringing any of those old bad habits, like the obsession with perfect calculations, into this new arena.
You want to enter that arena with a clean slate and a sharp professional strategy.
Exactly. We really hope this breakdown helped you see the beast differently today. It's not just a harder exam, it's a different game entirely. If this helped you, if it gave you a new perspective, let us know in the comments. We genuinely love hearing your success stories.
Absolutely. Good luck with all the prep.
And remember,
Think ahead.
to step beyond 49%.
To step beyond 49%.
See you next time.